evening, Rotorua tonight on City News. Finance Minister Bill English makes a flying visit to Rotorua. Bay of Plenty Regional Council announced new guidelines for closing Rotorua lakes. And Bay of Plenty Rugby League take on their Waikato counterparts this weekend. Those stories and more up next tonight on City News. The Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister Bill English made a flying visit to Rotorua yesterday. Mr English was in town to talk at a Chamber of Commerce breakfast and the Federated Farmers National Conference. I spoke with Bill English and asked him about his visit.
Well, I've come today to do two things. One is on a flying visit to speak to the Chamber of Commerce, and the last 2 years I've come to speak to the Rotorua Chamber of Commerce about this time of the year, so it's good to be able to do it again, and also to speak today to the Federated Farmers National Conference, which Rotorua is attracting more conferences now, and this is one of them. And of course what the farmers are keen on is some of the things that of course help Rotorua to have a stronger economy.
Yes, and farming is a very big contributor to our economy. How was the reaction to your budget?
Oh, pretty good, I think. There's been any number of decisions the government's made which individually people have been may not have liked. So, for instance, there were some decisions around KiwiSaver and Working for Families, which were about just trimming those schemes so that we can keep them, because they do make a big difference to families, particularly Working for Families. But I think people were pretty happy with the general direction, because they know that what's applying in their own homes and businesses applies to the government, and that is they're being careful with their spending, they're trying to save a bit more, trying to get their debt down, and the government actually has to do the same things.
We will have the full interviews with Bill English in next Thursday's programme. Rotorua-based Labour MP Steve Chadwick is adamant that the latest state housing announcements made by the government will be bad news for Rotorua. Steve Chadwick says changes to the way state houses are allocated will see more than 70% of Housing New Zealand applicants booted off the Rotorua waiting list as of today. And she says if National are re-elected, then many more existing Housing New Zealand tenants in Rotorua will be evicted. Mrs Chadwick says there are 97 people on Housing New Zealand's waiting list in Rotorua, and of these, 71 are Category C and D. She says these people are not wealthy, as the Minister has been claiming, and that they are struggling to pay the bills and find affordable accommodation. Steve Chadwick says these changes are not about focusing on need, but are happening because the government has slashed the funding for state housing and they need to do something about the waiting list. New guidelines for closing Rotorua lakes for events will now include closures for Māori cultural practices such as marae ceremonies and rahui. The new lake closure guidelines are designed to balance competing uses of the lake. Growth in the number of applications to close Rotorua lakes had put pressure on the Harbour Master to be more selective when approving applications. This is the first time that Māori cultural practices have been incorporated into an operational framework. Māori Party MP for Waiariki, Te Ururoa Flavel, supports the new guidelines. Mr Flavel says the biggest achievement is the proposal for dual consent, as the relationship between the people of Te Arawa and the Council is maintained, and no decision will be reached without the input of both parties. Under last year's Regional Navigation Safety Bylaw, anyone intending to conduct an organised water activity, such as a speed trial, competition or recognising cultural events or practices on a public water body, needs to apply to the Harbour Master to close the area. The new guidelines cover all lake closures, including closures for cultural practices and search and rescue operations. A small area next to a marae could also be closed to provide a sound buffer for ceremonies so they were not disturbed by boats. The Linton Park Community Trust is opening a new community centre on the west side of town. The Trust's goal is to foster and support community activities with the purpose of developing community spirit, enhancing the economic, social, cultural and environmental well-being of the Rotorua community through education, social and service activities run at Linton Park Community Centre. The The centre already has a number of groups who have booked in with programs and activities for the community. Linton Park Community Centre is at 16 Kamahi Place, and an open day is being held tomorrow between 1 and 3 p.m. for the community to come and see the facilities and programs on offer. In sport tonight, Bay of Plenty Rugby League representative teams take on their Waikato counterparts tomorrow at Puketewhero Park. Bay of Plenty Rugby League Secretary Jenny Nahu says the Bay record against Waikato isn't great, but this year the under 15 and 17 teams stand a good chance against their northern rivals. The 15s, 17s and Colts teams will battle it out from 1 p.m. tomorrow, with the men's grade game set to start at 2:45. To your weekend weather now, Rotorua. Tonight, fine southerly breeze, overnight a low of 0. Tomorrow, Saturday, fine morning frost and fog, light winds, a high of 11, another cold overnight low of 0. Outlook for Sunday, fine morning fog and frost again, light winds, a high of 12 and a low of 3. Marine forecast for Lake Rotorua for Saturday, tending southeast 10 knots, easing to 5 knots in the evening, waves less than half a metre, mainly fine, early fog possible. If you've missed any of tonight's bulletin, you can watch it again by going to tvrotorua.co.nz and click on the View Latest City News link, or to view what's on in our city, click on the Upcoming Events link. Coming up after the break, we talk about myopia control with Jagruth Blalu, Boys High Gateway Program Coordinator Yolanda Edlam and student Ashton Ledger talk about the program, and Lara Northcroft talks about the V48 Hours film competition.